Hey everybody, welcome back. Another lesson connected to Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. I'm excited to talk about what we were discussing today and actually comparing um, some of the ideas and themes represented in Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief and another story that we saw from Gifts from the Gods. Okay. It's really important that you have both watched or slash read the material for today so that we can compare them. If you have not seen both videos of and or read the Percy Jackson check and looked at the video for Gifts of the Gods, make sure you go back and do that now, so that when we are comparing the two texts, you already know what's going on in both of them, because I will not be reading all of them in this video. So let's dive in. Boop. So today, again, we're going to be looking at the Lightning Thief, chapters 2 and 3. We're really focusing on chapter 2 and toward the end of it. Chapter 3 we won't be focusing on, but it's an important thing to read just so that you can have an idea of Percy's home life that will come up and be relevant later in the story. And also looking at Gifts from the Gods, pages 20 and 22, which is the pages about where the word fate came from. Okay. So we're going to compare, today we're going to compare and contrast themes and ideas in stories from different cultures by noticing what is changed between the two cultures. And this is really important because stories that have been told for thousands of years are often, you can see very, very similar stories told throughout different cultures because there's different ideas that no matter what culture you're a part of, the ideas are universal. They're things that all humans experience. And so being able to compare stories from different cultures can lead you to understand the theme or the lesson that story is trying to show in each culture. And when you see what is different, that can help you find what is the same. And whatever is the same is probably the most important kernel of truth that the stories are trying to show. And so this is an important skill to have, especially as you grow older and you become more educated and view stories from different cultures outside of your own, that you can look and see the similarities and differences, and you can take the truths out of them that you wish to take. Before we dive in, I'm going to very quickly just go through the vocabulary, get ourselves activated, and then I have a short lesson that's going to set us up for our discussion today. So, number one, the word is confound, which means to bewilder or confuse. Simply, mostly if someone is confounded, they are confused, or if you are confounding someone, that you are making them become confused. Second word is gesture, which is a movement of one's body or fact that shows feeling or thought. It's a movement. It can be a hand movement, it could be a body movement. When you're rolling your eyes, you're making a gesture. Yeah, so those are what gestures are. Number three, the word is mournfully, which means extremely sadly. Sorry, not sadly. The word mournfully is usually used when someone is mourning. It means they've lost something, usually a loved one. So if they're acting mournfully, that means they're thinking about something that they've lost. Okay. Number four, the word is goading, which means stirring someone to act, especially by annoying or irritating them. You might think of it as taunting or like baiting someone to try to get them to do something. Come on, bro, step up. That's what goading is. Number five, the word is artillery, large weapons used in land battles, such as cannons or rockets. I'm sure you guys have played Fortnite and used the rocket launcher. That is a form of artillery. Number six, the word is bellow, to make a deep, loud cry, usually that of a bull, just a big bellow. Number seven is register, which means to make an impression. That kind of means when you are registering someone's presence, it means they are, or you may have heard the words to make a good first impression is you want to, when you meet someone, you want to make sure that they know that you're a good person. So when you are registering them, you are acknowledging and making an impression on them. And then the last two, the word number 8 is ambassador. It is a person who is sent by the government of one country to be its official representative in another country. when countries need to talk to each other, sometimes the presidents or the leaders can't talk to one another, so they will send an ambassador so that they can talk, and that ambassador is given a lot of power to make decisions on how those two countries are going to interact. Ambassador, we know when we do our school elections, and we choose presidents and vice presidents, those essentially you guys are choosing an ambassador from the students to represent your choices to the other adults in the school. So you're picking someone to represent you. And then number 9, the word is solstice. It's either of the 2 times in the year when the sun is farthest from the earth, occurs in June and December. There are 2 solstices. There's the summer solstice in June and the winter solstice in December. And the summer solstice is the longest day of the year. It's when the sun is up the longest in the sky. And then the winter solstice in December is when the day is shortest. Awesome. So, and last thing on that, they're usually given in different religions and different belief systems. The solstices are given some kind of like mystical power because if the sun's up longer or the night's shorter, then strange things can happen out of the ordinary. All right, just get your brain activated. In today's reading, Percy sees a sign about the future. If you could see the future, what would you want to know? So pause that, go ahead and answer the question. And now that you're back, I'm going to chicken out from this, and I don't want to know anything. I don't want to know how the future's going to go. I believe that you have a lot of control over your life, that there's a lot of things that you don't control, but there's a lot of things that you can control. But if you saw the future, then you would think that your future is set and that you couldn't affect it no matter what you did, and that would make me feel very powerless, and I don't want to feel powerless. I want to feel like my decisions have meaning. So that's my answer. I want to hear what yours are. All right. Before we dive into our thinking questions, we're going to go through a quick lesson on comparing contrasting themes. And you'll see that this is kind of like a 4-step process when we're comparing different texts and different stories, but about similar topics and similar ideas. And so our thinking questions are actually going to be mostly geared around the 4th and last step. And so we're going to just talk through the first 3 steps together and what they are. And then we'll dive into the thinking questions to help us eventually get to our exit ticket and compare them. So here we are. Again, our goal today is comparing the treatment of ideas and themes and stories from different cultures. And just in case you didn't know, a good keyword for this is culture, which means the customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. So I know that's a big definition. So culture refers to a lot of things. It can be the way it's always the way of a group of people. It can be a small group of just 5 or 10, or it can be as big as an entire country or even the entire continent of someplace. But it's customs and things that the way people act, the way they speak, what they eat, what they believe in, the different kinds of government that they have, or the belief system, or what they think is important. All of those are aspects or parts of people's culture. And so when we're discussing culture, we're talking about a lot of things, but usually you can define someone's culture by the things that they believe, and it's what is similar to the other people living near them or around them, or that share common belief systems. So I know that's a lot, but culture is a big topic. So here's the steps to kind of do that, and each one is fairly simple and pretty straightforward until you get to the end. So the first 3 we're kind of just going to bop through real quick, and then we'll focus more on the last one with our thinking questions. Okay. So first thing we have to do is just figure out what kind of texts are we comparing. Okay. And so what do we already know about the author's craft in each kind of text? So speaking about our 2 books here, The Lightning Thief and Gifts from the Gods, we know that The Lightning Thief is a fiction fantasy text. And we know that the author is going to use this to tell a made-up story that that is used to entertain us, but to show a particular theme. And he might use characters and problems and solutions that people have to tell that story, and different settings throughout the whole place to make it seem like it's a real lived-in story. Now, Gifts from the Gods, and I'm holding it up because you can see it on the small screens, is it's interesting because it's telling us stories about the Greek mythology, but it's almost kind of a nonfiction text in the sense that it's giving us information about where words came from. And so this is going to be a little different. It's again more about using stories to tell us information about certain topics. And so when we're reading this book, it's more about gaining information and less about the story that's being told. Right? So we know that the author is trying to give us information in this one, whereas this book, the author is mostly telling us a story. Okay. Now, look for clues of culture. Now, this is to find which culture is being represented in each story. So we can look in for the names of people and also the setting. Okay. Specifically, we're going to be focusing on pages, the end of chapter 3, and so of Percy Jackson. And in those sections, the setting is on a bus on the side of a highway. Early in the chapter, it's at a preparatory school, and there's names like Percy and Grover and Nancy. And these are words that we kind of see in mostly like modern culture that's happening in America around the time that we are living. And then, like I said, the settings are also modern. It's taking place when there's buses and when there's highways, so around now. And Gifts of the Gods, the pages that we're working on, pages 20 and 22, it's definitely evidence of Greek culture because of the names of the fates that are being here. Clotho, Atropos, those are showing that this is happening during Greek culture because of the names. And the setting even just says that it took place a very long time ago. It's not really given a real place. It's more of just about the time period. And so we can see that these are two different cultures entirely. One taking place during Greek mythological eras, and the other taking place in modern time. Now, here's where things get interesting. What theme is shared? We can look for similar lessons. We can look for similar problems and solutions or different symbols. Okay, so lessons get us really to the theme, where we know it's a deeper lesson or truth about life that everyone can use all the time. Problems and solutions are, if we're comparing two stories, we can see how the stories, the different characters deal with the problems and how they solve them in different ways. And symbols are actually what we're focusing on, things that are being represented. In this chapter, what theme is shared is the symbol of fate. Okay, so we learn about the three fates from 20 and 22. And we also see representations of life and possibly death and fate in the end of chapter 2 as well. And so that's what we're going to be zooming in on, is these symbols representing this idea or this theme of fate and life and death. And so that's what we're focusing on today. And now here's what we're going to actually do the work with. We're going to compare them by finding similarities and differences, the events and characters that are being shown around fate, the problems and solutions that are being shown around fate, or sometimes even the amount of detail and how these two things are described between the two different texts. So this is what we're going to be focusing on with our thinking questions today. All right. So, in summary, we know we're through this whole steps. We're comparing and contrasting this idea of fate between the two stories: The Lightning Thief, which is taking place in modern times America, and Gift from the Gods, which is taking place in an informational setting in Greek mythological times. All right. So, with that in our brains, let's dive in. Now, this first question right here might not seem, how does the author show that Grover is worried on page 27 and 28? Might not seem to be so important between comparing the two texts, but you'll see that it ties into question number 3. And you'll also notice that I've got two different pages here. 27 and 28 are the pages from the original book, if you have the physical book, and then 30 to 32 is if you're using the electronic text that I sent out online. So go ahead and dive into your text, whichever one you have, to find ways that the author is showing that Grover is worried. Awesome. Now that you're back, I'll show you what I found. I found a couple different examples on these pages. Zoom back here. Oh, nope, I went back too far. Here we go. And so on these pages, we see it says Grover didn't look much better. He was shivering and his teeth were chattering. He dabbed his forehead with his shirt sleeve. Right? And I think those are the two ones he used. Yeah, so if he's dabbing his forehead with a shirt sleeve, that probably means he's sweating. Yeah, also, I didn't mark this, but it says he's asking a bunch of questions, Percy and Grover both. And so when he's asking questions, all these things are showing that he's worried. His teeth were chattering, he's shivering, he's sweating, so he's dabbing his forehead. And those are all things that people do when they're worried. I really like this because in our writing class, we often talked about showing, not telling. And this is the author doing a really good job of that. The author didn't not once say that Grover was worried, but we know he is because of these things that he's saying. And so we have to make the smart guess to show that he is feeling worried in this time and place. So these are the examples that we can use. He's shivering, his teeth are chattering, and he's dabbing his forehead like he's sweating. So the author shows that Grover is worried by telling us that his teeth, he was shivering, that his teeth were chattering, and he was sweating. These are things people do when they are worried or nervous. Awesome. Again, I know this might not seem that important, but it actually will tie in later to question number 3. So, question number 2 says, and this is where we really get into the comparison, the kind of descriptions that we're getting about the idea of fate. So, what objects does each text use to represent a person's life? So, head back into Gifts from the Gods, head back into these pages. Like I said, right at the end of chapter 2, and see what objects does each text use to represent a person's life. Awesome. Now that you're back, I'm going to show you first from Percy Jackson and then Gifts from the Gods. So, in Percy Jackson, right here, we've got a couple things. The first is right here. It says, saw them knitting the biggest pair of socks I've ever seen. I mean, those socks were the size of sweaters, but they were clearly socks. The lady on the right knitted one of them. The lady on the left knitted the other. The lady in the middle held an enormous basket full of electric blue yarn. All right. So, and this shows us that to represent life, the women are using yarn. They're using yarn here, different from what we see in the other text, which we'll go back to in a second. I also think, not necessarily life, but right here too, the old lady in the middle took out a huge pair of scissors, gold and silver, long-bladed like shears. All right, so they're using this yarn and big scissors to represent what is probably the idea of life, and with the scissors, even death. And I probably should have started with this one, but we read it before, so I think people will recognize. Going to go back into camera mode. Went too far. I can see you watching me. It's awkward. All right, and so zooming into Gifts from the Gods. Again, if you look back at the video, you can see this. It says right up here where I have it underlined. Clotho the Younger spun a thread on her distaff that symbolized the life of the new person. So she used thread. The life was called the stamen, and Clotho spun many different kinds. Right? And so you can see in the picture the same thing, that this cloth, this thread, is used to represent a person's life. And so in Percy Jackson Lightning Thief, the thread is yarn, but in Gifts from the Gods, it's represented as the original Greek mythology, which is using a thread, or also known as a stamen. So let's compare those two things. In Percy Jackson, yarn is used to represent a person's life. In Gifts from the Gods. That's a name of a book, so it should be underlined. I know this is a small detail, but it's important to know that thing. A thread called a stamen is used to represent a person's life. And I'm going to add, because we notice this, in Gifts from the God, scissors are used to cut the thread. Okay? And that's also used in Percy Jackson. So we can say that that marked the end of somebody's life. So we can say that scissors are used in both texts to mark the end of someone's life. Right. Wonderful. So I hope that made sense, comparing those two things, the items that are symbolizing someone's life. I probably should have started with the Greek mythological, because without the story from Greek mythology of the Fates, 3 old women serving thread or in knitting socks isn't really have a lot of meaning. But if we understand that those are representing the Fates that were very important in Greek mythology, then all of a sudden these old women knitting socks have a lot more meaning and have a lot more importance. Right. Now, we said how the objects are represented differently, and now here's how we're going to dive in really deeply and interestingly. How is the theme about fate treated differently in each text? Okay. So think about and look back. How is fate treated in Percy Jackson? And when I say treated, think about the problems and solutions, or the amount of detail of the description that both the fates are given from each text. You can also think about what is the author trying to tell us about fate from each text, and compare how those things are compared. This is something that I would really like to discuss. I think it's going to be a challenge to completely dive and understand it on your own. So try your best, and then when you come back, I'll give an explanation that I hope is satisfactory. Awesome. Now that you're back, here's a couple things to think about. There's a lot of ways that they're treated differently. I think there's 2 main ones. Okay? I think the first is, and I'm going to start with Gifts from the Gods. I have been on my camera the whole time. I'm so sorry. So at least here's the response. And now I'm going to go back to camera mode. So in Gifts from the Gods, here's the first point. It said some stamen were made of fine linen, others were made of ordinary wool. Some were fragile, and some were tough, some were soft, and some were coarse. Okay. Lachius decided if the new baby's life would be good or bad, blessed with wealth or rife with poverty, orderly or chaotic. And so that point being here, that in the original Greek mythology, someone's life could be good or bad. It could be orderly or chaotic. There seemed that it was kind of neutral. And what I mean by that is the idea of fate is that it can go a whole bunch of ways. It could be great, it could be awful, it could be somewhere in the middle where it's just normal. Okay. But in Percy Jackson, it seems more like, and I'll bring it back here to show you. There we go. It just seems, especially the way, and this is how it grows, it seems like this is all just bad and scary. Across the road, the old ladies were still watching me. The middle one cut the yarn, and I could swear I could hear the snip across 4 lanes of traffic. Her 2 sisters balled up the electrical socks, leaving me wondering what could possibly be for Sasquatch or Godzilla. And then down here, Grover, that snipping the yarn, does that mean somebody's going to die? He looked at me mournfully, like he was already picking the kind of flowers I liked best on my coffin. And so I think between the two, Percy Jackson just seems like these fates are just something bad. Something bad is going to happen. Someone is going to die, or something is going to be lost. Where in Greek mythology, it seems that there was a lot more possibility of both good and bad, where in Percy Jackson, the fates are just It's if you see your fate, it's just not a good thing. Right? So that's one thing. I'm gonna point that out, and hopefully you notice that. Let's say in Percy Jackson, the fates are shown purely as a bad thing. Grover is worried about what Percy saw, and it seems the author is trying, or it seems like something very bad is going to happen. In Gifts from the Gods, comma, beep, fate has the ability to be both good and bad, depending on whose life it is. Well, there's one more way I think that they're treated a little bit differently. All right, I'm going to go back to camera mode and show you this from Gifts from the Gods. And I didn't underline this, but it's right here. I think shows it the most clearly. From the beginning at the end, it says, once the fates had made up their minds about a human's destiny, it was impossible to change the outcome. And then over here, it says, as the time of birth drew closer, Clotho the youngest spun a thread on her distaff that symbolized the life of the new person. And so in Gifts from the Gods, it seems really clear that a person's fate was decided for them before anything, before they were even born, and there was nothing that they can do to change it. Now, in Percy Jackson, the line I read before, you can see Percy saw one of the fates snip the cord. So it means that that to me, that seems like his fate hasn't been decided yet, or it wasn't decided before he was born, that he still had some effect on how his life was going to go. All right? And then Grover, again, is worried, which makes it seem like something bad's going to happen. But if you knew that no matter what, something bad, or that someone was going to die, you wouldn't be worried. You just would let it happen. And so I think this shows that in Percy Jackson, the character's fate isn't decided before they were born. They have a little bit more effect on what would happen. Whereas in Gifts from the Gods, it seems like someone's life is decided how it's going to go before they're born. So I'm going to say, additionally, in Percy, I'm going to actually start with Gifts from the Gods. In Gifts from the Gods, a person's fate has been decided before they are born, and there is nothing they can do throughout their life to change it. In Percy Jackson, Percy sees the yarn being cut. Jeez, man, which means it was not decided before a person was born. He may have the ability to change his fate. But I know that was kind of a lot, and you had to sift through what the author was trying to show about the theme for each one of these, but I think those are some of the big differences between the two. All right. And last, this is solely to do with Percy Jackson. What does the author want you to predict about Percy and the Fates? So go ahead and take a moment to look back at your text and try your best to answer that. Awesome. And so again, this is an author's craft kind of thing. It's not really comparing the two. But like we discussed before, it seems pretty clear, like right back here, they were watching him right there, and back here, they seem to be looking right at me. I think the author wants us to know that Percy and the Fates are very, very connected, and that something bad will probably happen to him. Okay? So the author wants us to know that the Fates are paying close attention to Percy, and that something bad is probably going to happen to him. Okay. And you probably don't have access to this right now, but I want to show you guys this. Back in chapter 1, right at the very beginning of the book, right here it says, if you're reading this because you think you might be one, my advice is close this book right now. Believe whatever lie your mom or dad told you about your birth and try to lead a normal life. Being a half-blood is dangerous. It's scary. Most of the time it gets you killed in painful, nasty ways. From the very, very beginning of the book, the author is trying to make us think that something bad is going to happen to Percy. And then he does it again in this chapter. And so the author is really planting these seeds that we should expect something bad to happen to Percy. And so that it creates this this tension, this suspense through the whole book that we're waiting to see what happens to him. Which is why this is such an exciting book to read, because right from the beginning, even though nothing bad has happened yet, really, even though he got attacked, we keep waiting for it. We keep expecting it. So that's a good response to that. Now, after doing those steps and thinking through those questions, we should feel really confident about our exit ticket. So I'm going to give you can pause and answer these on your own, and then I'll go through each answer to see why it made a strong one and why would it not be. So go ahead and pause it and do this on your own. Right, now that you're back. And you'll see me do it too. When you're choosing your answer, you can just click on this little highlighter up here and pick any color that you want, and then highlight the answer that you think is best, and I'll see it on your work. So the first question is, what is similar about how ideas about the Fates are expressed in Gifts from the Gods and the Lightning Thief? So basically, what's happening that's the same in both texts. So in both texts, people attempt to influence the Fates' decisions. We know that's not true because in the Gifts of the Gods, the decision has been made before someone is alive. You could say that in Gifts from the Gods, it does tell us that some people try to affect the Fate's outcomes later on, but then in Percy Jackson, we don't see anyone trying to talk to the Fate and try to change their discretion yet. So that's not matching up. Okay. In both texts, people see the Fates as scary and threatening. We talked about this in question number 3. In Percy Jackson, that is certainly true, but in Gifts from the Gods, it didn't seem like people thought the Fates were scary and threatening. It was more something that had already been decided and not something people needed to worry about. Their fate was already in the hands of the gods, as people would say. In both texts, the Fates are shown working at a fruit stand. That is not true. In Percy Jackson, they are, but in Gifts from the Gods, they are not. That's just very obvious. And then in both texts, the Fates are shown as 3 women. That is true. And there's 3 women in Percy Jackson. There's 3 women in Gifts from the Gods. So that would be the best choice. Let's just go ahead and highlight that. Something I didn't mention, but another way that they're treated differently. In Gifts from the Gods, the 3 goddesses are a picture of these 3 beautiful, youthful goddesses of life. And then in Percy Jackson, Lightning Thief, they're portrayed as these like haggard, scary old women. The same as that happened in the movie Hercules that came out in the cartoon too. The Fates were showed as these like really terrible, evil, or not even evil, just like nasty looking older witches almost. So it's interesting to see how fate has gone from these 3 young, beautiful women to these old, haggard, scary ones over the courses of thousands of years. I wonder why that is. All right, and then the last thought, what is one difference in how ideas and the fates are expressed in Gifts from the Gods and the Lightning Thief? Let's look at choice A. The fates and Gifts from the Gods cut the yarn, and the fates and the Lightning Thief do not. Well, that's not true, and they cut the thread in both texts. In this text, they cut it before the person's born. It seems like in the Lightning Thief, they cut it while someone's still living, but the thread is still cut. Okay. In the fates in the Lightning Thief, knit socks, and the fates in the Gifts from the Gods, spin stamen. That seems to be a good response because that's what we answered here. The symbols to represent a person's life, yarn and socks were what Percy Jackson was using. And the other one, stamen and thread, were what they're using, so that seems to match up pretty well. Let's continue to the rest. The fates in the Lightning Thief are serious. The fates and Gifts from the Gods are not. I could see that being a good choice because it does seem as if the Lightning Thief fates are more serious. They're more scary. But the fates and the Gifts from the Gods, they were fairly serious as well. They are young and beautiful, but they do seem like their job is pretty important. They're deciding the fate of a human life. And so I can see why people would think this, but I don't think it's quite as strong and as clearly supported in the text as these two. All right, because you have to make a little bit more inferences to see that this is accurate. All right, and then the last one, the fates and Gifts from the Gods give most people short lives. The fates and the Lightning Thief give long ones. In the Gifts from the Gods, it's shown that people are given all kinds of lives, both short and long. So that's not a true statement. And here we don't know how long the life is. We only saw that one was cut, and so it might have been a long one, it might be a short one. We don't know for sure. So the best choice that we came up with was choice B. So if that's what you thought, you did careful thinking, and you should feel pretty good about how you did. Awesome. So we compared those two texts. I hope that you can see the similarities and the differences between the two of them, and we'll be using stories from here more as we continue to go through Percy Jackson and see other stories from Greek mythology and see how they're similar, but also how Rick Riordan takes them and adapts them to a more modern culture. Stay safe. Can't wait to see you guys soon.